Thank you, and great to see all of you here today, especially those of you that have braved the train strike, which I know tends to put the fear of God into organisers of events as soon as it gets announced. So it's great to welcome so many of you here. My name's Councillor Bev Craig. I'm the leader of Manchester City Council, and I also lead on economic issues across Greater Manchester. And it's great to have so many of you in the room today in what is, I think, a very exciting but also challenging year ahead for the UK. And it's great today that you're spending quite so much time thinking about how the sector and the industry can continue to grow here in the north of England, how you can make our economies thrive, how you can help us inspire our places to go even further, but also how we as local leaders can work with you in the industry to do that in partnership. Now, looking around the room, I think there are some people that are from here in the city, and there are those of you that have travelled from farther afield. And I want to just really take a few minutes just to talk about how important the growth of cities in the UK has been for the UK's economy. And I want to touch on Manchester as the obvious example. So those of you that know our city well know that 20 years ago we were a declining post-industrial city, a city only 20 years ago of 420,000 people, with some quite challenging social issues to deal with. Back 20 years ago, only three quarters of our residents had any formal skills and qualifications, so 25% of all residents with no skills and no qualifications. Fast forward now 20 years later, we're a city that's grown to 600,000 people. In our city centre alone, 25 years ago, less than 1,000 people lived in the city centre. That's now home to over 70,000 people that make Manchester city centre their home. We've challenged some of our pressing social issues too, so that challenge around skills and opportunities. Only 6% of our residents now have got no formal skills or qualifications. And we sit at the precipice of what looks like a golden age for Manchester, where our city is bucking all of those national economic trends around growth, where our productivity, despite the challenges we see nationally, continues to rise, where our GDP continues to rise, and the number of businesses and startups in our city continues to grow. In 2017 alone, we had 17,500 new businesses in the city. That's now grown to 23,500. So there's certainly, I think, a time when we talk about some of the economic doom and gloom that we face across the UK, there are some roots and green shoots of optimism, I think, that can drive us forward. We also see now an economy that 20 years ago we couldn't have hoped for, where we think about the role that our digital and creative industries play in the city and the city region. We talk a lot about the £5 billion GVA that our tech industry adds to Manchester and the wider city region. But to be one of the largest creative economies outside of London in Europe is something here in the city region that we're immensely proud of. And I think about the role that within our creative industries, the advertising agency plays in that. Home to over 25,000 jobs right here in Greater Manchester, working across the northwest of England. All of this success hasn't happened by accident. It's taken a clear strategy from city and regional leaders to set out what we want our economy to be, how we want it to grow, and who we want it to grow for. Setting out key industries that we wanted to target, and we reflect, I was talking beforehand about the success of Media City. These things don't happen by accident. They happen by targeting anchors that can move north, that can make the north their home, and to build around them. And we see that now. We see that despite the slowdown in the UK around office lets, whereas Manchester in the next 12 months alone sees 2.2 million square foot of office space coming on. And part of that you can see not too far from here in First Street. Anyone that's been to Enterprise City, the home of Aviva Studios, which houses Factory International, you can see WPP's exciting new campus there, for example, with 67,000 square foot and thousands of new jobs in a whole new creative district for Manchester. But if I think about the year ahead, and I think about some of the challenges that we face, I think looking at your agenda today, there's lots, I think, to think about and a lot to be excited about. We see a year that will no doubt see some economic change, that will no doubt see political change, and making sure that we're well placed, that we can work together as local places and the industry to be able to set out what it is that we need to grow. I was at an event earlier on today around biotechnology. Not an obvious link, humour me on this one. But part of what we were doing is setting up the collaboration that we need to have with Liverpool, with Cheshire, with businesses across the northwest of England. Because if we truly want to be world-class and thriving cities, we need to work collaboratively, not competitively, with the towns and the cities that sit around us. So the initiative that I was launching earlier today is hand in hand across the northwest. And I think that's why when we think about the role that the advertising industry within our creative economy plays, seeing the opportunity across the north of the England is so vitally important. Because when I go abroad on international trade visits, I'm not competing against Liverpool or against Leeds. I'm competing against Milan, against Barcelona, against US cities. And I think the more that we do as northern leaders to join this up, it makes life easier for you as an industry, but it also puts our places on a much better footing. The last bit that I want to touch on really is what makes places so exciting to live and how that benefits businesses that choose to base themselves here. I want to touch a little bit on our housing ambitions. So as I said, Manchester's a city that's grown significantly. That's not planning on letting up anytime soon. We've got a trajectory of 36,000 new homes over the next decade, 10,000 of those genuinely affordable and social homes, but the rest of them across the city and across all tenures. We're seeing the need for that because our city's continuing to grow, because we're retaining that excellent talent that we have in our universities. Only over 54% of students at the University of Manchester and at MMU stay here in Manchester, and 60% stay within the Northwest as a whole. So we need the homes to be able to attract that world-class top talent. We're seeing many people move from inside of the UK, but we're also seeing ourselves achieve that ambition of having a more global reach. At the last census, over a third of our residents were born outside of the UK. And that shows really, when we talk about the opportunity of a global city, a city that speaks over 200 languages, where people with multiple identities can call Manchester their home, but bringing the top talent to live, to stay and to thrive in our places. And that's why we invest in our places. It's why we talk about the need for a more inclusive economy, good opportunities and good access to high quality neighbourhoods. All of these are the ingredients of a successful city that attracts people here, that keeps people here, that makes it an exciting place to live and to work. So I've obviously spoken to you about Manchester, and I want you to take away not just that we as a city are doing well, but when you start to think about places, you start to think about the opportunity in the UK to base yourself in somewhere, particularly in the north of England, you'll find plenty of me. You'll find local leaders right across this country that are passionate, energetic and excited for their places. But we do that in partnership. We do that in a way that connects our vision for a place with the opportunities and the ambition and the excitement that you as the industry can bring here. So I hope you've got an exciting day planned. I hope you take from it lots of really interesting things. And for those of you that are already based in and around Greater Manchester, I want to say thank you. Thank you for being part of our journey. And for those of you that haven't yet become accustomed with the Manchester way of doing things, hopefully you'll get to learn a little bit more about us. Because I think in the coming years, if the UK is to achieve its aspirations around social and economic prosperity, it's done through cities, it's done through rebalancing some of those regional inequalities, and it's come through having a national approach that allows cities like Manchester, like Leeds, like Liverpool, like Newcastle, like Sheffield, like Nottingham to continue to thrive and to do well. So thank you for making the journey here today. I wish you well for the rest of your session. Looks like you've got some great speakers, and I look forward to working with many of you in the future. So thank you.
thank you indeed.